Hi, second grade. Welcome to day 3 of Mirette on the High Wire. Now, before we get into our lesson today, we are going to be working again on story structure. We're going to be filling out the same type of graphic organizer that we used last week when we were working on story structure with Mackinac Bridge. So before we continue, I want you to pause the video right here, and I want you to go back and look at the feedback that you got from your teacher on your Mackinac Bridge graphic organizer from last week. And I want you to be thinking about maybe what kind of mistakes you made or things that your teacher said you could improve on, because when you fill it out this week, you can use that feedback to make sure that you raise your grade. So pause the video right here, go back and read the feedback, and then we're going to get started. So hopefully you've had a chance to read your feedback now. So now we are going to jump into talking about story structure again today, but this time we're going to be using the story Mirette on the High Wire. So every story has a structure to it, a beginning, a middle, and an end. And our goal this week is that we are able to describe the structure of a story, and specifically the story Mirette on the High Wire. So we talked last week about how different things happen at different points in the story. In the beginning is when a lot of things are introduced, like the characters, the setting, and the problem. In the middle is when everything starts to build. The problem usually gets worse. Sometimes there's details that are repeated again from the beginning of the story. And oftentimes the characters attempt to solve the problem, but they don't quite solve it yet. At the end is when the problem is solved, and usually the characters are learning some kind of a lesson. So today, just like we did last week, the first day of us working on this story structure chart, we're going to focus on the beginning of the story. So we're going to focus on the things that are being introduced. What characters are we meeting? What is the setting? And what is the problem? These are all things that you need to include in your chart when we are done rereading the beginning of the story today. So I want you to be thinking, and maybe even jotting down while you're listening to me read, who are the characters that we're meeting? What is the problem that's happening at the beginning of the story? And what is the setting? All of those things need to be included in your chart, as well as any big important events that happen at the beginning of the story. So maybe go and grab a piece of paper, pause the video again, and then we'll get started. Okay, so hopefully you have what you need to be paying attention to what things are being introduced. I'm going to start reading just the beginning of the story today. So make sure you're looking for characters we're meeting, the setting that's being introduced, and what is the problem that's happening at the beginning of the story. 100 years ago in Paris, when theaters and music halls drew travelers, players from all over the world, the best place to stay was at the Widow Jatou's, a boarding house on English Street. Acrobats, jongleurs, actors, and mimes from as far away as Moscow and New York reclined on the widow's feather mattresses and devoured her kidney stews. Madame Jatou worked hard to make her guests comfortable, and so did her daughter Mirette. The girl was an expert at washing linens, chopping leeks, paring potatoes, and mopping floors. She was a good listener, too. Nothing pleased her more than to overhear the vagabond players tell of their adventures in this town and that along the road. One evening, a tall, sad-faced stranger arrived. He told Madame Jatou he was Bellini, a retired high-wire walker. "I am here for a rest," he said. "I have just the room for you, Monsieur Bellini, in the back where it's quiet," she said, "but it's on the ground floor with no view." "Perfect," said the stranger. "I will take my meals alone." The next afternoon, when Mirette came for the sheets, there was the stranger crossing the courtyard on air. Mirette was enchanted. Of all the things a person could do, this must be the most magical. Her feet tingled as if they wanted to jump up on the wire beside Bellini. Mirette worked up the courage to speak. "Excuse me, Monsieur Bellini. I want to learn to do that, she cried. Bellini sighed. That would not be a good idea, he said. Once you start, your feet are never happy again on the ground. Oh, please teach me, Mirette begged. My feet are already unhappy on the ground. But he shook his head. Mirette watched him every day. He would slide his feet onto the wire, cast his eyes ahead, and cross without ever looking down, as if in a trance. So that's the beginning of the story. What you need to do now is you're going to open up our chart where we're going to write down the important things that happened in the beginning only. We're not going to worry about the middle or the end until tomorrow and Friday. So you need to open up this chart. In the first box, you're going to put the major events that happened in the beginning. You should have more than one event, not just one. Think about like the big important things that happened in the part of the story that we just read. Now down here is where we need to get a little bit more specific. So I want to know, who are the characters that were introduced at the beginning? That needs to go in this box. What is the problem that is introduced at the beginning of the story? So what's the problem that's happening in this story right now? And then what is the setting? At the beginning of the story is when we're introduced to the setting or where the story takes place. So all three of those things need to be included in this box. Remember, we're not submitting this assignment today. The assignment's going to be submitted on Friday. Today, we are only focusing on the beginning. But it's always a good idea, even though we're not submitting, to make sure that you are reading over your work, making sure it makes sense, and making sure it has complete sentences.